Well, hi. I initially said that I wasn't necessarily going to be doing this video, but drama, back and forth, and then started thinking that this thing that I'm about to cover, it might become, or at least still be relevant in the coming year or so, because of some of the things uttered in this video. So I am going to cover, you know, the the interview that Trent Clark gave from last year on 107.9 FM out there. So I forget where in East Idaho, but a place where a lot of good friends of mine are. They speak very highly of the radio station there. And these two, I remember watching it for the first time. I set aside some time to do it. In fact, I remember that day being otherwise pretty busy. And I watched it, and it was a really good interview. And they did really well with the subject material. They did very well with their guest, and their guest made a complete fool out of himself and his former establishment faction. So I'm going to see a year on what parts of this, because I haven't really pre-reviewed. I've only got this whole reaction set up here working. I've only done it enough to working, so I haven't actually listened to most of this interview in well over a year. So it's going to be kind of like a trip back in time. So as soon as I get OBS to cooperate here, see, I've got stuff going on in different places, but see, I just click the right things, and then y'all get to see how messy my Mac desktop is. There we go. See, I got some crud over there. Can you see you might be able to see the cursor there. Yeah. I got some junk and whatnot. Can you see my Christmas music? I think you can see my Christmas music. Yeah, you can see my Christmas music in there. It is currently July 18. Anyway. Okay, so I'm gonna play this now. If you're in that end of the state, definitely give these people a listen. Definitely definitely think about patroning their sponsors and whatnot. These two people, they did a very good job with all of this. So anyway, I'm gonna stop babbling and start reviewing. Here we go. I pressed the wrong button.
All right, Julie, are we ready for this?
Let's do it.
All right. Trent Clark is a former chair of the Idaho State Republican Party. He also currently is part of the leadership at Gem State Conservatives.
Conservatives, because we we in politics we often love giving names to things which describe something else entirely. There's another word for that too, but I'll keep going.
And we want to welcome him to the program this morning. Trent, how are you this morning?
Uh, I'm doing great and very privileged to be here. I listen to the two of you every morning that I can.
Well, we appreciate that you do that. I do want to preface our conversation. This may be a dynamic conversation that we're about to have. I consider you a friend, Trent, and I respect the efforts that you put forward in politics in Idaho, though there are some things that we may see.
Mutual glazing and whatnot. This is stuff that people normally don't have an issue with. I don't have an issue with. However, I get the feeling that I'm going to be accused of having a problem with just the pleasantry stuff, because, well, people from Gem State Conservatives, they've made that kind of drama before. Well, anyway.
Differently, but here we are less than a week away, and I described it earlier this morning. We interviewed a candidate, and I said it almost feels like you're watching a movie and it's in the run-up to an epic battle scene of the movie, whether it's Lord of...
Well, that's a little bit overhyping it. It's a primary election. It's not the Battle for Helm's Deep. Jeez.
the rings or something similar to that. And we know that you've been part of an effort to flip some PCO chair roles, and ultimately,
And depending on the month of last year, they might actually confirm that, or they might try to say, "No, we're just bringing it back to Republican." Depending on the month or even the week or the day last year, you would have got a either agreement with that statement or a disagreement with that issue. Anyway, moving on.
goal, it's no secret at all that you'd like to see Dorothy Moon go as the chair of the Idaho Republican Party. And so you threw in, I believe it's $100,000 of your own money that you had set aside for your wife and you for retirement. But sadly, she passed away last year. So you've redirected that money to a place that you thought she would want it. And also, we understand, and you can correct these figures if you'd like. I've heard it bounced around that there's somewhere around $2 million in this war chest.
That number has been of a lot of discussion ever since, because it's something that was definitely claimed to be so, both in that infamous letter with his and Tom Luna's and Tom Lurcher's and other people's signature on it. Not only that, but in certain other hushed conversations, sometimes in conversations where these gem state conservatives thought that they were all in agreement in certain private settings, and then they totally weren't because I don't know. I guess OPSEC is just not a thing for them. I don't know. But anyway, or or they just love stabbing each other in the back, because that's also a thing on the gem state conservatives side of things. Is they they sometimes don't treat each other very well, either. But anyway, keep going.
Accomplish this in order to make it happen. Correct any errors that I've made thus far, Trent.
Well, what's odd is that you can tell whose narrative you've heard, because
I love how he's trying to do ad hom against somebody he doesn't even know where the information has come from yet. But this is a thing that especially a lot of the former establishment from, say, the mid-aughts era forward. They love to do that specific tactic of ad hominem. Ad hominem is a very big thing. It means attack the person, and it's in an, as opposed to attacking the argument. But there's one very specific kind of ad hominem is like, well, I can tell where you got your information. It's not an intelligent thing. It also obfuscates a lot of what the real issue might be at hand. In this case, it's the funding and other resources that the Gem State conservatives would eventually just burn up for a very meager and underwhelming result in the convention. But neither here nor there, and I have a lot of things to say about what happened after that convention too. But hey, we'll keep going.
amazingly, it's all become about narrative control. I mean,
Yes, that absolutely it always was about narrative control, Trent. I mean, and you seem to be of the position that you should always be in control of the narrative. I mean, for heaven's sakes, you even sued a reporter for accurately, like the one of the very few times that a reporter actually accurately recalls something a Republican said. That they actually accurately did that, and then you sued him for it. Y'all don't know what I don't know what I'm talking about? Well, it's this time that Trent Clark had apparently said that every black person in D.C. had been arrested at least once in their life. Yeah, he actually said that. But anyway,
you can sell your narrative, you get your spin on things, and so there never was 2 million, never will be 2 million.
he would also later claim that yes, there was 2 million. No, there wasn't. It would flip a lot long before the first meeting was called to order in Coeur d'Alene that year.
million. And in fact, that is coming from a fundraising letter that actually says we don't have the 2 million that we need, and we're asking.
Well, that's an interesting way to spin the document that you and three other people signed, Trent. It's a very interesting way to put it.
For your help.
Okay.
That's where that's coming from. We are facing a Nevada PR firm by the name of McShane. That's, by the way, the PR firm for the Proud Boys. That
I had never heard that name, until I watched this whole thing last year. Haven't heard it since I last watched it last year, and he immediately tries to guilt by association, Proud Boys, and all of my opposition. Yeah, that's people who are capable of shame would not have done it that way. But since Trent is not capable of shame, he did that.
has been retained to help.
Hey, Trent.
And I love. Okay. See her face and their immediate reactions, their facial expressions.
Let's not
Yeah.
do the ad hominem, okay? That's not what we do here. I mean, you're trying to insinuate something there, but let's stay away.
And not only that, he's trying to insinuate something about a lot of people he's never seen or met. And he's doing so because they're on the other end of a factional rift. And that's literally the only reason he's doing that. Men with honor don't do that.
From that if we can. It
No,
only
no, I'm
it
just
only
doing the
adds
math.
to the toxicity.
Neil.
Go ahead.
No, I'm just doing the math. I'm just
A man who deals fairly with his fellow men does not say, I'm just doing the math for that kind of thing.
we say in our fundraising letter we need to raise 2 million. There's a 500,000 we're facing in one place, and there's 1.1 million that's coming in from a Virginia-based outfit. And so, if you add that math,
Really?
in order to overcome that, we need to have a goal. Our goal was to reach 2 million, but we're
That's very interesting word use, goal there, given that you would later use a different word when we were all at that hotel in Coeur d'Alene. Y'all thought, and to think you originally thought that people weren't listening to you after that Region 10 meeting.
going to get even close to that. The other thing I would correct in what you said is that you said I tossed my $100,000 in. No, no. There's perception that there's this pot out there. No, I dedicate
I kind of figured you'd be that paranoid about the word pot.
my 100,000. It has been put into a political action committee that was disclosed with the Secretary of State, and that 100,000 will be directed to where I direct.
Ah, yes. See, it was disclosed with the Secretary of State, therefore everything's above board, everything's legal, everything's good. That's how it works, right? Everything legal is good, right? Do we really want to be going down that direction? And you can see the look on this guy's face right here. He's just like, oh, really? It's the face of a person who's used to being BS, especially as a matter of course for their job. I mean, in radio where you're interviewing people, of course you're gonna get BS'd, but that face still don't like it. You can tell with this dude.
It's not thrown into any kind of pot. I am supporting some specific candidates, people who I know, who I've worked with, who I believe will.
So you know these specific candidates supported by Gem State conservatives. You want to pull on that thread?
Will bring about the grassroots oriented party that is the party that
You're quite literally trying to change. You were quite literally trying to change things from grassroots up to top down. You're quite literally trying to do that, especially with the likes of Tom Luna, Mary Souza, etc. That those are the people you were literally trying to put in at the convention. Thank goodness for Idaho's sake that you failed.
Now for 46 years worked in. The description of also the flipping precinct positions, no, that never was the goal. The goal
You literally just contradicted yourself, Trent.
the goal was to say what we want to do is go back to where these precinct committee people are not power brokers. They're servants. They're servants of their precinct.
He later puts it in a worse way, which are the words that people now use, especially to make fun of this thing. But it is true that the local precinct committeeman is absolutely supposed to be the interface between the Republican voter and the rest of the Republican Party. That is absolutely true. But to say that they should not have power is an extremely anti-grassroots view, for one thing. It's also an extremely un-American and un-Republican view.
They do the things like call up the legislator and say, hey, we're here working on this bill. You know, it doesn't really work for us in our community. Would you mind coming and listening to our concerns?
If you actually call up a legislator and say that, you're not going to get them to come over. You have to be a little bit more human about it.
That's what a precinct committee person is supposed to do is be the one who reaches out and gets the policymaker and says, would you please come and listen to the Republicans of my precinct? They're a servant. They work for their Republicans. And by the way, the characterization of these folks that I've reached out to as quote the
You can see this man right here. He's already kind of regretting this. I think though that his patience with this will definitely pay off because he got a lot. They got a lot of kudos for this later on, and and it's well earned because they did this whole interview. They they got this out there. They did it very well. So, but yeah, look at that man's face. He's just not. Yeah. Anyway.
establishment. We all laugh at that because you have to understand how we got into the mess that we're in. The hard workers, these are the people who what they do is they blow up balloons.
There's the infamous line. It keeps going. I'll get there in a moment. And it's not like it's completely untrue because when you work in the background in political context, is that there are tasks that you do, and then there are often other smaller random tasks that you also do. And yes, sometimes that would in fact involve blowing up a balloon. It might involve licking a stamp for an envelope, if at least back when that kind of thing was done that way, or a lot of repetitive tasks like lit bag filling and stuff like that. It's not like he's completely wrong. Just the way that he's putting it forth is completely stupid and extremely demeaning to the workers that we need in the Republican Party. I mean, how exactly do we want to move forward and get results as a political party when people like him are just going to degrade and demean them?
They lick envelopes. They walk door
Oh,
to door and drop off literature bags.
Then
That's
Trent,
what
why are you
that's what we
spending
do.
so much money to change balloon blower uppers and literature droppers? Why put so much money into that if that the way you've just described their role?
he's going to put it another way, but it's because he and his friends want power. And the way that that would happen in this situation is he would get a bunch of PCs on the ground level who would put him in power. That's how he would get the power. Luckily, most of that was for naught.
Because what we found out is, and we discovered this in Twin Falls, is that um, the quote unquote establishment, if you call the establishment the elected people, they for years, I'd say for probably a decade or more, have been neglecting the actual party workers. And what happens when you
So you acknowledge that the former establishment has been neglecting the party workers, the workers who do the things, and yet you immediately turn around and demean and degrade them for the point of getting power? That's a tacit admission that it never really was about the PCs to begin with. It was about putting you and your friends in power.
neglect the hard work, the balloon blower uppers, is they get tired of doing the job and not being listened to, and so they drop out. And so
You know where the most egregious examples of our volunteers dropping out, how that was happening? You want to know how that was happening? When we have people on the local level like Victor Miller, Barrett Tetlow, Travis Clyde, Kim Wickstrom, who do the top-down kind of arrangements that Trent Clark is. In fact, Trent Clark wanted those people and people politically near them in power here in Ada County. He wanted that. But that was driving people away. In fact, Travis Clyde was responsible for a lot of uh, volunteer flight, as it were. There's a couple of specific instances that absolutely exacerbated this, but just as general style, the two incidents that I can think of at the moment were the signupgenius.com incident, where where somebody put in a bunch of fake prank names to the one of our biggest outreach events of the cycle. Somebody signed up a bunch of fake people to fair booth slots, and somebody thought it was funny. But what happened with most of our volunteers is that they saw this going on, they saw us being messed with, and so that completely demotivated them. And a lot of people just simply didn't sign up after that. And another thing that happened was people started noticing that that side in the local county committee would carry upwards of 7 proxies to a person. And Travis himself handled something like 13. And then there was this one time where the dude literally showed up with a laser printer, illegally plugged it into the back of the room, and started printing off proxies there in the room. None of that should have been legal. Everybody knew that should not have been legal. And there were people that stopped coming for a while after that because they saw how corrupt things were going. You want to talk about volunteer demotivation. You want to talk about PC demotivation. You want to talk about worker demotivation. Your faction is most certainly more in the wrong than anyone else in the state of Idaho. Screw you for suggesting otherwise.
had happened is that position of precinct committeeman started to be neglected, and people just didn't run for it. And then what happened then was people within the party and even from outside the party who feel like they've never been heard, and very often that's because they have certain.
You want to. This is another local Ada example, but you want to know what will really demotivate PCs in a meeting? Try to say that voting procedures aren't germane to voting. Yes, that's another Victor Miller thing that happened, of course. There are a lot of examples of really bad behavior coming from him and his ilk. And that's somebody Trent Clark here absolutely supported. Absolutely. And you know what? Heard about that kind of thing all the time from places like Bingham, from Caribou, from the former Blaine Committee before they got really based, from a lot of places like that.
Kind of odd ideas, like we shouldn't really have a civil rights act, or um,
Okay, he is definitely projecting there, or at least trying to put words in other people's mouth. Nobody. I know of nobody that was trying to say that we shouldn't have a Civil Rights Act. The Civil Rights Act were, it came from conservatives like me. It came from conservatives like the Republican whole. History has muddled it a bit, but that is, that is absolutely a lie to say that conservatives wanted the Civil Rights Act gone. I don't understand how it's just ignorance that would make Trent Clark say that. You know how I always talk about Hanlon's razor, never attribute malice to ignorance. Well, at least where ignorance would fit. Ignorance doesn't fit here. Trent Clark knew he was lying about that just now.
or women really shouldn't be involved in politics, and people who have kind of these out of the mainstream ideas, they saw these open precinct committee positions, and they said, "Oh, that position is open. Let's."
Yeah, see her face over there? See right there? She knows she's listening to a liar. She knows she is being lied to. She knows that what the modulated grunts coming from the other simian across the phone line is just bunk. Nobody likes being lied to. Why would Trent Clark assume that these two people or any of their listeners would like to be lied to?
For it. And in Twin Falls, we come in and we find out that the party position kind of sought after for power, not to blow up balloons. These were not people who ran so that they can, blow up balloons for Debbie Critchfield. Uh, and
People were signing up and running for precinct committeeman positions so that they could be more involved. And being involved means that sometimes you do a lot of the smaller tasks and a lot of the more repetitive tasks. Sometimes that means going down to the state house and testifying on something. Sometimes that means being the power broker inside of the party. To suggest otherwise is to suggest that precinct committeemen should not get involved.
there are many of us who worked in the party for years who say this is a problem because
Yeah, it's a problem for you because you're not able to control them.
that's not what parties are about. Parties are about reflecting the will of the voters at the ballot box. And so
And top-down control of a party will invariably drift away from that. It will always drift away from that, and it will become extremely unrepresentative of the people, usually within a few years' time, if it even started from a good position at all. The only way that you stay representative of your voters is that you're the ones that are not only engaged on the ground, but you stay involved. Not only that, but you keep to the Republican platform. See, the word platform is a bit of a dirty word in the former establishment. It is truly a dirty word over there. But you do the things big and small. You keep to the platform. You keep with your voters. You don't just lick the stamps and blow up the balloons and know what a good cookie tastes like. I forget when he's going to use that line, but it's coming.
So if if Raul Labrador is my candidate, I'm going to blow up balloons for Raul Labrador, and that's what a party is about. And
If that's only what it was about, the Republican Party would have ceased to exist decades and generations ago. And I'm trying to find a way to see how that wouldn't be the case, and I'm coming up with nothing. Trent Clark would have had to have known that, and yet here he is, and we've got this increasingly incredulous face over here. This dude is disliking this even more. You can tell it on his face. You can read that face like a book. I mean, look at that.
I've been as
Okay,
strict on the
Trent, I gotta
yeah.
stop here. I gotta stop here. I'm really sorry. Um, I am not here to defend any current PCOs at all. In fact, it's bizarre to us that this has become such a big deal in this 2020.
Why has it become bizarre? There's a very good answer to that question. And it's a whole line of questioning that people in the former establishment should have been going along with before they even paid a red cent to anybody about this whole thing.
Or race, primary, it's crazy, but I think most PCOs would be so incredibly offended by the way that you have just characterized them.
And they were.
I can't even, I know several, and I can't imagine how offended they would be by the way that you just characterized them.
Could you explain what the offense would be?
Wait,
That was the, I remember that line now. That is what set me off the most, is that he's pretending he doesn't even know why normal human beings would be offended at that. See, the thing is that establishment over there, they know why. They just love denigrating and putting down the other side. Because they come from an era in the Republican Party where things were more tribal rather than about electing Republicans and getting things done and doing things about issues.
you said that those positions have been filled by people who don't want women involved in politics. There are multiple women who are PCO they're serving in that position.
Okay, so
A lot of the smartest ones that I come across are also women, just so you're aware. There are differences between men and women, of course. However, they have just as much place as as a precinct committee person as anyone else, and they often have a lot to contribute.
but Julie, the as Neil, I appreciate Neil setting the ground rule. I didn't say every single one is like that. I've
That's not a defense.
I've said there are precinct committee people now who sit at the table who that is their view. It's not even a majority, but I can actually list their names. Most of them are in northern Idaho. So I'm not saying every precinct.
Just in case the listener is not clear, that was a tacit admission that yes, he is going after specific PCs, not only because of a factional difference, but because those PCs are more involved.
Committee person doesn't want women involved, but many do in northern Idaho. That is a common.
Then why not
Uh,
direct?
He's trying to denigrate some very specific people here. And I think they mostly that's mostly a bunch of stuff having to do with Kootenai County, because they've Kootenai County has definitely got a lot more respect over the years. across the state, especially with conservatives. And that's what I think angers him a little bit. And that's why he lashed out like that just now.
Your money, then why not direct your money to those races and not to East Idaho?
Actually, I'm trying to think.
He's about to
Where
lie right here.
I have supported a few folks in the Upper Snake River Valley. I don't think any of my money is going, for instance, into Bonneville County. But some of my money.
We would later find out that's a lie. They resources were absolutely poured into Bonneville because Bonneville County was one of the few places that they actually won. And so they have to claim the victory there. They have to put in their own people there. But to do so would mean that Trent Clark just lied.
Is going to help candidates in Northern Idaho. So
Trent,
so when you say why not?
Can I point something out? You have two former party chairs, both men, trying to oust the female party chair.
I point this out a lot. It pisses people off when I do. And it's hilarious every time. And the fact does still remain that, yes, a lot of people inside of the Republican Party in Idaho are absolutely upset that there is a woman as chairman. And they've been trying to get rid of her ever since.
Okay, so I don't know. I don't even want to make this about gender, but you have. So if you're
He absolutely did.
going to make it about gender and make sexism part of the accusation that you have against these people, then how do you think it looks to have you and Tom Luna trying to oust the female, current female, very strong female, by the way, chair of the party?
Well, first, I'll agree with you, Neil. I think the dynamics of that that they don't look good, and I have.
Oh, they don't look good. No, they aren't good. Because the former establishment position on most things isn't principled at all to begin with. I mean, let's start there. Because that's the frickin' truth. But, add on top of that there's this power dynamic that they believe that a woman should not be in a position of power such as that. And they are acting upon that belief. And we're all supposed to pretend that that's not actually happening? Screw you, Trent.
Zero problem with Dorothy as party chair. Actually, I had zero problem with Dorothy as party chair.
Okay, Trent.
Their reactions, both of these people's reactions, right here. Spot on.
I have read what you have written. You have so much. Trent, I feel like the premise of this is entirely about the problems that you have with Dorothy Moon.
With Dorothy Moon's decisions, but not with her as a person.
Trent, we both know that that's a lie. And I could be here on this video spelling out all of the reasons why people would believe that's a lie. In fact, there's a very recent one about America 250.
Okay, well, thanks for that clarification. But that, I mean, we all have problems with people's decisions. But again, I don't know why you went to that point that I don't have a problem with Dorothy Moon. You're
because I'm the one who welcomed Dorothy into the party. I was the party.
Dorothy Moon would later refute a lot of what he's about to recall here. He's about to say some stuff about Dorothy Moon's political beginnings in the state of Idaho. But he's leaving some things out, and there's a couple of fibs that he says, in the midst of it.
When Dorothy moved here to Idaho, and she was introduced to me, I remember we were at a party event in a gymnasium, and there was a kind of I think they were doing a fundraiser cakewalk, and a longtime party worker pulled Dorothy over to me and said, I'm really excited. Have you listened to this person? She's a Tea Party activist, and she doesn't.
It's interesting that you mentioned the Tea Party activism here because the Tea Party people are the very people that the former establishment railed against and would often do a lot of very sneaky, underhanded, and nasty stuff against them. I mean, the most public example that I can think of, at least in the moment here, was the whole normal guy incident. You know, that that whole dirty trick was was played, or basically how we would be accused of being liberals just for saying the name Ron Paul. Don't try to sell to us now, Trent, that you were excited about a person aligned with the Tea Party in the mid-aughts. One, the timing's a little off there. And two, we all know that if that's what was said, that you were immediately rejecting such a person. So something's got to give. Some part of this is wrong.
Now participate in the Republican Party, but we want her in here. And she introduced me to Dorothy, and I remember saying, "Do you know what? We have many Tea Party activists who are active Republicans. We would welcome you, Dorothy." So
Some welcome she got.
that's my history with Dorothy. Is I am the party chairman who welcomed her into the party, knowing she was a Tea Party activist. So there's nothing about Dorothy being a dynamic, hard-hitting
Trent Clark knows that he's lying right there. Just
Tea Party activist that I am against. I was the one who welcomed her into the party. Now, the decision to not tell the legislature that May 21 will just not work this year. I mean, just the calendar would not let it work. She never told the legislature that. And if she had told the legislature that, as you go back and do a step,
Dorothy Moon was not the person who made the May primary go away. He's Trent Clark is trying to apply that she was. What happened was a bill change that accidentally, but not really accidentally, deleted the primary. Went through the legislature, and people were ignoring the citizens and the officials who were saying, hey, this is not only going to do what you want, but it's also going to delete the primary. So this whole junk right over here that Trent is saying about this this calendar thing, it's some very sweet things, and then it's also some dog poop mixed in with it. That doesn't make a good cookie.
by step analysis of what really got messed up last year. It was that everyone was trying to figure out, well, if we can't do it on top of a bond election, when can we do it? And everyone needed to know the deadline. No one.
The only people who were working towards an actual feasible solution to that problem were in the IDGOP headquarters. One of them was chair. Her name's Dorothy. She's a good person.
Knew the deadline, but Dorothy. And why
That's a
wouldn't
lie.
she tell everybody, well, we've got to do it before X date? And people will blame Phil McGrain. Guess who didn't know the deadline? The deadline was set by the RNC. The RNC tells Dorothy, doesn't tell Phil McGrain. And so Phil McGrain didn't know the deadline. Phil McGrain, yes.
That's an extremely interesting way of putting it. It's a lie, but it's a really interesting way of putting it when that Phil McGrain, he's presented as this all-knowing commander of all of the rules. And also, there's some reason that we would find out way later after this interview, after the caucus and all of this interview and all this stuff later. There's reasons we would find out later that yeah, Phil McGrain actually did know.
introduced a bill to put the presidential primary on May 21st, and that was wrong. And he now admits that. He now knows it was wrong.
Then okay, but here's the deal, Trent. You're trying to blame Dorothy Moon completely for that. Here, we've said it definitely was a cluster, but there is blame to be had by multiple people, and you're assigning all of the blame to Dorothy.
And I'll add here that the blame is sort of a useless thing if only one person or one smaller group of people is trying to do anything about it. Trent Trent Clark was definitely not one of those people.
If it comes across that way, I apologize, because I actually hold myself. Did you know that I
Oh, you hold yourself, huh?
went to the Senate? I was thinking I was supporting Dorothy because we were opposing Phil McGrain's bill. And
Yeah, the timeline didn't exactly work out that way, did it?
I told the Senate, May is very often a problem. When there's a Democrat in the White House, it forces the Republican convention to be in July. And when you have the Republican convention in July and we're only wrapping up our primary at the end of May, there's just not enough time in there to get your national delegates in. And I told them that, but I actually, I fault myself, because did you know that I could have, the very day that I testified, I could have gone on the internet and found the date of the national convention, and I would have been able to be the one who said, oh, I just looked at the date. That would give Dorothy only 9 days to get our national delegates in, and I don't think that's possible, because 7 of those days are just canvassing the primary. So there is no way, Dorothy,
Okay.
and I should
Okay.
have done. So I'm partly to blame, but
Hold
the
on,
thing
hold
was,
on, hold on.
See, you see what she's doing over there? You can see that she's putting together the what Trent is trying to build there, and it's falling over.
We started this whole conversation with you saying that Dorothy was the only one who knew the date and she didn't tell anybody, but you made a simple search and you found it?
yeah, because I had assumed that if it wasn't going to work, that we would have known that. The problem is that Dorothy had been notified the December before that legislative session. In other words, the legislative session
Didn't
started
quite go down
and
like
she
that, but
already
okay.
knew that date didn't work. And here I'm testifying in March. I just assumed, oh, it's going to be tight. It'll be really awkward. We're going to have to rush people. Well, it turns out it's just physically not possible. And I don't know why Dorothy didn't tell anybody that.
Okay.
Why didn't she? No,
Well, if
no,
it's that
no.
easily
If it sounds
discovered,
like I'm just,
I honestly feel like
yes,
people hold very high profile positions, and if it was that easily discovered, then her and Phil McGrain equally share blame in your scenario. Because
you
he's
know
the
what?
man over the
Phil's the kind of guy.
elections. I, I,
Phil is the
I,
kind of guy who probably would agree with you.
yes, I have mass appreciation for Secretary McGrain. So, but
Yes.
I'm not going to allow you to sit here and assign that blame to Dorothy Moon when it should be shared, in this case, with the way that you laid it out, equally.
And put on top of this that Dorothy wasn't necessarily concerned with blame after the fact. She was still trying to make it work. And she did make it work. She engaged the party to do it, and we actually got a very successful primary, rather caucus done. I even bought a red dress shirt for the occasion.
You know what? I don't want to argue that issue, because
Oh, now you don't want to argue that issue now that somebody's shooting a bunch of holes through it. It's like freaking Swiss cheese.
I do believe I share part of the blame. And
If you do believe that you share part of the blame, you should have let off with that, and you definitely should not have been relaying this whole tale like you have been.
if it sounds like I'm saying all of our problems will be fixed if we just get rid of Dorothy Moon, that is absolutely wrong.
You were definitely implying that with that fundraising letter.
So this whole characterization of all that I'm out to do is change Dorothy Moon. Here's the truth. If we elect precinct committee people who really reflect the voters of their precinct, and they go in and they elect Dorothy Moon, I will be happy.
You pretended that you were happy for about 2 seconds at the convention, and then you immediately flipped on that. And you have been even worse towards her since. Not only that, but we have seen your demeanor, we have seen your behavior, especially in executive, state executive committee meetings. You're trying to pretend like you're above board here when you're very clearly not, Trent.
Okay, now look, let's continue down this road because really the PCOs, I feel like we're dancing. You said your money has been assigned to Northern Idaho. I think our listeners,
No, no,
no. Well, hold on. You said that your 100,000 that you put in, you get to determine where that goes to. Then in the follow-up question, you said you had the most concern about Northern Idaho. I said, why are you spending money in East Idaho? You said you were more concerned with Northern Idaho. I think we need to be clear that Gem State conservatives are paying to unseat PCOs in East Idaho.
They were all over the state, in fact.
I don't think that that was a fair reflection.
Well, so Gem State Conservatives is a loosely aligned umbrella organization.
Is it really all that loose when you came to my precinct to door knock for my opponent, who subsequently never showed up after the reorg? We don't even know if that dude is still alive. Just for the record.
And there are many people contributing. I'm, by the way, the only one contributing through a publicly disclosed PAC. I chose that because I want...
Publicly disclosed makes it all better, right? Is that the metric for the acceptability of things?
Well, because $100,000 is a big chunk of money, and I wanted to make sure people knew exactly where's that coming from and where's it going.
No, you were bragging about the money that you were spending on things, and you wanted other people to also brag about money should they donate it to your cause.
Okay, but
not everybody who is contributing to Gem State Conservatives is doing it through a PAC. So,
okay, so Trent,
there are a lot of people donating.
Really quick, how much money has Gem State Conservatives raised?
My $100,000,
and we know that's a lie,
and more from other people.
How much?
I don't know how much.
Trent, ballpark. We don't need the list, but I would imagine you're passionate enough about this. You know, ballpark, how much this group has raised.
I have a ballpark, yes.
And
what I can tell you is it's nowhere near $1 million. It's nowhere near $500,000.
We would also know that that's a bit inaccurate.
300,000, 400,000.
My ballpark is right in that area. Yeah.
Okay.
Oh.
So what we're seeing, Trent, and I think this is the. I mean, we're arguing about a lot of stuff here, and we're trying to flesh through all of these details. I think for the most part, what our listeners are interested in is May 21st, and they see all of these PCO signs that are out there.
May 21st. That's less than a week after this interview. Yeah, it was about at that point where I first watched this thing.
Are more in alignment with the freedom end of the party. Others are in alignment with Gem State Conservatives, and we see these very almost identical signs, other than the precinct specific information. The candidate,
I've made hay about that specifically in the past, but I'm now of the view that's a little bit unfair to say, oh, these signs all look the same. Well, of course they would. They're the same people working on the same project. Of course it would. It doesn't look good though when people see this across the different precincts, and not only that, but you're not being in a lot of places, you're not even being all that careful about which signs are going in which precinct. And and a lot of other thing related matters are also being sloppy, especially with a lot of those precincts in East Idaho. Yeah, that was the thing. Whether you wanted to pay attention to or not is entirely your own deal.
Sync number, and there is a chunk of money. I don't know how much. However, I'll give you a couple of examples. One that I saw this morning, Michelle Zeal-Dingman is running for PCO there. Now, I like Michelle. I think she served pretty well. The Idaho Falls City Council. She is not a conservative. There is no way you can make that argument that she is a conservative in anything in her political past.
I later asked about that name specifically, and the East Idaho people that I trust about this kind of thing said pretty much the exact same thing that this guy said right here. And it is completely fine that you hold a different view other than stock conservative. But, as I said a lot in my platform series, is that if that is true, that you are, if you are a bit separated from the standard, as it were, you should at least be honest with yourself about that, and you should be honest with your voters about that.
Again, that's not a dig on her. It's just a recognition of where she is politically.
Yeah.
Another PCO candidate, I don't know if Gem State Conservatives is throwing money behind Sean Coletti. He is not even close to being a conservative.
I even knew that name before this interview. He's that infamous.
Is Gem State Conservative funding candidates that you haven't even looked at to see if they're conservative?
Their political position wasn't exactly the actual criteria for selection. Now, this, of course, we know this in hindsight, but a lot of the people that they like, in fact, actually, I probably threw it away. But the Gem State Conservatives postcard that they sent to my house, by the way, which is also very interesting, that how they were managing those details. Why would you send a postcard like that to your opposition? Like, why? But the Gem State Conservatives in District 17, they sent me this house one of those cards, and every single person on there was either some kind of autocratic functionary or lobbyist, except for one person, and that person was one Daryl Hansen, who I happen to know personally. I think very highly of. But don't say for a second that because of the one person means that you were very discriminating about your selection of this. You knew that these people were conservatives. There were some people on there that I would call sociopathic, that you don't even know if they're conservative or liberal or whatever. You don't know. They're either so far into themselves or so far into exploiting other people that there's no way to know where they are on that spectrum. Don't try to pretend that this wasn't the case. There were a bunch of those kinds of lobbyists and whatnot. Anyway.
Well, I don't think anybody's, at least that I'm aware of, is funding Sean Coletti. I personally am supporting Wendy Horman in that race.
Well, but, PCO.
She would often. I'm sorry. She would later say something very interesting regarding that, and I'll just let Wendy say it in her own words if it ever comes up again.
Race.
Yeah, is he even challenged in that race?
I don't know that he is. I don't know.
Yeah,
that's kind of beside the point, Trent, and I think you know that.
Oh, so I mean, for the most part, one of the reasons I haven't needed to put money into Bonneville County is there's other donors.
Other donors, which means there was more money put in the pot, which means it was definitely more than that 100,000. Now, 100,000 is a lot of money, but there was even more put into the pot. And that, just for the record, I'll repeat it again, that was one of the few places where Gem State Conservatives, they, them, actually gained any ground. It's also interesting.
Helping out precinct
Okay, but
candidates
Trent, I'm
in
not really
Donovan County.
talking about your money. I'm talking
Yeah.
about the
Well,
thrust of Gem State conservatives. Is there any
so this
kind of a threshold or any scrutiny at all on these PCO candidates, or is all you're looking for someone who will take on the name of a Republican and vote against Dorothy, vote against Doyle Beck, to vote against whoever the people that you're not fond of? What is the threshold to be a Gem State conservative precinct candidate?
See, Neil, what you just described is this phony narrative. I'm
Well,
hearing you talk about this. I'm thinking,
That you were rather discriminating about your candidates. That is now a false narrative. You literally said that like maybe a minute ago in the video. Screw you.
wow, that never happened at all. Let me tell you what actually happened. I go to Twin Falls. I see
Trent, hold on.
entire delegations.
Trent,
Yeah.
just a second, because I think you're kind of dodging my main question here. And forget the run up. That's what it looks like to me, that you're trying to unseat Dorothy Moon. But we can set that aside. We don't have to litigate that right now. I'm asking you, when Gem State conservatives support PCO candidates, do they ensure that those candidates are conservative?
So that's why I need to tell you how you become a candidate within Gem State conservatives. Um, in almost every case,
In almost every case, they knew somebody who was one of these top-down former establishment, or it was somebody who knew somebody. In the case of my opponent back, last year, it was literally some lobbyist's father, who also happened to be a lobbyist.
we just went to counties and we said, do your Republicans of your county really control your county central committee? And if they said yes, we said, great, that's a good thing.
Is that the way you want to put it? Because there's a very interesting conversation that you had not long after the convention that you knew people overheard. Might circle back to that, might not.
Are you finding that that's stable? They said they'd say yes, and we were fine. But
That's not how those conversations went down, by the way. Because here's another interesting example of how they're mismanaging their resources is that a lot of places where they were in control, they still pushed, and in some of them pushed hard. And definitely, and a lot of those examples definitely didn't gain any ground. But, they definitely didn't allocate their resources towards the places that they should have been pushing more towards. This is why it's Bonneville County and maybe like one or two other places where they actually won. And that's like it. They lost in Ada, they lost in Kootenai, they lost in Canyon, they lost, you know. Anyway, I could talk a lot about that because the failures and the reasons for the failures of Gem State conservatives, they, them, are very interesting because whenever you can, you should definitely learn from your enemy's mistakes.
if the people who we talk to, and when we're talking to people, we're talking to the balloon blower uppers that I know from 20 years ago.
Okay,
That I
Trent,
know from
I
10
gotta
years ago.
stop you again. You gotta quit calling them that.
Any upright, person who values the time and efforts of people who are on the ground, our volunteers, whether they're PCs or not, they are absolutely offended at this very kind of thing. And it is a little bit weird that she's acting offended for people, but she's not wrong. Because I imagine that she has this magical human quality that most humans have. It's called empathy.
That is so denigrating.
It
Oh,
is.
see that, Julie? That's the problem. Is to to refer to the people who do the grassroots work as denigrating because they do the grassroots work. For the longest time, you knew you were a good PC because you knew what a good cookie tastes like.
There's the line. There's the line. And you know what? Everyone was extremely correct to run that line into the ground, because bad ideas, especially ones expressed in bad faith, deserve to be made fun of. They deserve to be mocked. They deserve to be denigrated. They deserve to be driven into the earth. They deserve to be buried.
Because the one thing that PCs have always done is you're trying to get people together to do party activities. What brings people together? Cookies.
All right,
So,
Trent.
That is such a sorry excuse for, a sorry attempt at recovery that it's extremely clear he knew he messed up. He just didn't know how to recover, which is really interesting because this guy used to be a lobbyist himself. He would know how to communicate better than that.
so a good PC worker was someone who brought good cookies. That's how it.
I do. You know what? Actually, I myself do know how to make some pretty good cookies. I have a couple of good recipes up in here, and I am one of the few male chronic volunteers that can cook, can bake. I can absolutely do that kind of thing. Absolutely no issue. Crock pots are my favorite medium, though. I love cooking with my crock pot. But anyway, I'm getting a little bit off point, but yeah.
This job was about the service that you do.
We are way over time right now, and we're very full with a lot of political ads. We've got to break away. We'll continue this discussion with Trent Clark after this on News Talk 1079.
You can just feel that Trent Clark on the other end of that line. He knows he messed up. He's trying to recover from this, and he doesn't do a good job of it at all. In fact, I think it's I forget the line he says, but he kind of makes it worse later.
Local, stimulating talk for East Idaho.
The Neil Larson Show podcast. Grab it.
Neil, that's his name.
Talk1079.com.
I kept forgetting his name. He's a good dude, though. He does a great job over there.
Loved watching paint dry.
Dennis, what are you doing?
I'm watching paint dry and I love it.
20 years later, Dennis still loves
Well,
watching paint dry.
I don't feel safe skipping ahead past this. Not only because the Neil might actually be a little upset, but QuickTime here might
disconnect you because there's
Yeah.
a time limit on Zoom, and we don't want to get disconnected in mid conversation.
Oh, yeah, there's like a
can you
technical thing right there.
reconnect here in just a second.
Glad to do so. Thank you.
Oh yeah, this was happening live on. Oh yeah, that's right. Some radio stations they kind of have to do it that way. But yeah. Anyway, as I was saying, QuickTime often disagrees. It's not good with skipping ahead a lot of the time, and so you have to go forward and then back and forward and then back again and all that. And so I'm just letting this play right here, just so that I don't have to go through this mess, because it's going to take less time just letting it play straight through. So anyway, that's what's happening right now. But how are we doing so far with this video? Trent is digging his own grave, and he's already got at least 4 feet of it. Remember, he only needs about 6.
Start your outdoor experience now only at Taylor Chevrolet in Rexburg, home of oil changes for life.
It's election time, and stand up for Idaho.
See, where are we at in this video? Oh gosh, I still have 42 minutes left on this. I might cut it off early, depends on what happens later in the video.
Legislative District 35. Following the introductions, there will be a Q&A session. Many of the candidates
You know what? I'm gonna risk it.
Incumbent House Representative CB. Know who you're voting for. Be sure to come prepared to
Wait,
ask
I
the
might
hard
have...
questions. Attendance to the town halls is free, but donations are greatly appreciated.
I might have a
Stand
way
up
to
for
go
Idaho's
faster.
Weekly Town Hall, Wednesday, May 15th. Snake River Event Center, Shiloh Inn, 780 Lindsay Boulevard,
No.
Idaho Falls, 6:30
No,
p.m. Doors open at
that's not it.
5:30 p.m. We will start promptly at 6:30.
Hi, this is Becca with Crystal Water.
It's screen foot to
Is your
top.
current water softener leaving you with dry, itchy skin? It
It's-
may be time for an upgrade, and we can help with one of our premium water softeners. Soft water is better for your
And
skin,
trim.
the plumbing, and
It's
the
one of
appliances
these
in your home.
options in here.
Come
Hold
see us
up.
today, or head to
Minimize
crystalsoftwater.com
zoom.
to see
Moving
all of our
export
systems.
progress. No,
We know
it's
your
not
water,
that.
And we know what it needs. So let us at Crystal Water show you
Oh,
how we
there's
can
a...
treat you and your water.
I hope the writing on that email didn't
I'm
show
State
up.
Representative Julianne Young. I'm a no-nonsense get-her-done mama bear.
Oh,
known
man.
for successfully tackling
Another one of the
issues and ways
problems
to
that
make
came
life
out
better
of
for the folks back home.
outside
Now,
interferences.
Idaho values are under attack, and I have stood at the
Julianne
forefront
Young
of
got
this
knocked
battle.
out in
I've
place of
worked
Ben
tirelessly
Furman,
to
who
protect the things that matter
was one of
most,
the people
from
behind the
historic
bad
tax
things
relief
coming
to
out of
election
Bingham
integrity,
County.
from legally defining male and female to
so
protecting
decrease
private
size,
property
languages,
from forced
subtitles,
annexation, from improving
audio
access to mental
track,
health care to ensuring schools can hire retired law enforcement officers to provide security. I have successfully crafted and passed policy that makes life better for real people. Now, boys with special interests are targeted.
There used to be this thing in QuickTime that would allow faster playback.
For you, not their deep-pocketed agendas. This election day, join me in sending a clear message. District 30 is not for sale. Vote to keep Idaho true to its roots, its values, and free from outside control.
Here.
And we're back 9:36.
Oh,
on News
okay.
Talk
Well, we'll just
1079. Grand Peaks Primates, proud supporter of the show. Julie, you and I have had so many crockpot meals and sous vide cuts of meat. Their ribs are super good. Their steaks are fantastic.
I love me some
French
crockpot.
dip. I dream about that French dip. It's so good. Yeah.
Yum.
Go to gpprimemeats.com. You can get all of
Sorry,
that.
somebody's
there.
texting
If
me
you
in the
have
middle of
questions,
this.
Give them a call. They're super great to work with. They do have local delivery in Idaho Falls. If you spend more than $75, it's free.
I'm just gonna
If not,
keep
it's just a
playing
small
through this
tax
because
surcharge
it's
through
gonna be
East Idaho.
it's gonna
So,
be
yeah,
a really
GP
bad
Primates,
nest of
get on
things
there,
if
see
I
what you want. You can also call them and
try to
schedule
skip
everything that way.
past this.
All right, we're back 9:36. Talking with Trent Clark, former
Okay, here we go.
state party chair for the GOP, and also currently is part of the leadership of Gem State Conservatives. And Trent, we were in the middle of talking about how you're. Go ahead and I guess pick up where you left off.
You were describing a PC candidate that you thought was not a conservative, and I have to admit, not everyone that we are helping to support has gone through some kind of test. We didn't do a survey. I don't know. I have a little bit of a hard time with that because I've never seen a good survey that can't be.
What he's trying to imply here is that vetting is bad because problems. It wouldn't be this wasn't the first, definitely wasn't the last time that he would do this, where he would denigrate the idea of vetting candidates and vetting PCs.
Biased.
But Trent, then why are you calling yourself Gem State Conservatives? Because that implies
it's a good point,
you're
Neil.
going to get conservatives. I think you have to have some kind of an examination.
Well, because
Yeah.
conservative is a word that has an actual meaning. It's getting tossed around all over the place, but it actually has a dictionary meaning. And the meaning is someone who is supportive of the form of government that was put in place at the last popular revolution. That is the definition of it.
That is one of the more obscure technical meanings that definitely has a lot less relevance in this particular discussion. Now, we could go over dictionary definitions. In fact, just behind me, I got a red dictionary. It was printed in 1990. And the reason why I got that dictionary, because, it was Christmas Eve. We were kind of wasting some time in a thrift shop. And, it had already been an issue for quite some years where major dictionaries like Oxford and Merriam-Webster and whatnot, they were changing, they were changing and backdating a lot of inconvenient or definitions for certain words, for certain social ends. And that really shouldn't be the place of a dictionary. The dictionary should just be a lexicon of words and definitions. And so that's the reason why I have a big dictionary like right behind me. It's over there. But we could go through that dictionary, specifically the parts that mention conservatism. And yes, there would be some parts that align technically with what Trent is describing here, but there would be some that would be in opposition. So, going after what defines a conservative in this particular context without any real modern context and without any good connections to the platform, it leads me to believe that Trent Clark is absolutely trying to mislead the listener.
Conservative. By the way, people need to keep that definition in mind because it's why they can call Vladimir Putin a conservative.
Is that then?
Nobody in this country would refer to Vladimir Putin as a conservative.
Trent, hold on, Trent. Yeah. We kind of have to hurry and not have a lot of history here, and I don't mean that to be rude, but we got to get to these issues. Is that the definition of conservative you're using when you call yourself a gem state conservative?
Well, that is what conservative means, and then what we do is we're looking for people who will do the job of precinct committee person. Now, let me tell you how I learned the job of precinct committee person. I was taught by Helen McKinney. She's originally grew up in the Salmon area, moved over to Caldwell. She's in our Hall of Fame. She was actually the very first most valuable player if you look at the Hall of Fame. Helen McKinney.
Oh. Mentioning the Hall of Fame is not the plus that Trent is implying here, and that most people without information would think. There are some pretty horrible people on those lists. Trent Clark being one of them. But people like noted anti-Republican Jim Jones, noted malcontents such as Victor Miller, Barrett Tetlow, those kinds of people, I wouldn't want to be on such a list. And I'm sure this person that he's referencing was a very good person. In fact, they might have even been a very good conservative, both in the context of the time and in the context of today. But this is not traction in the conversation that Trent Clark believes that he's getting. It's absolutely not.
Knew how to do grassroots work. She did
kinds of leadership style and leadership results that you are going for, Trent, and we've been over this, are definitely the most incongruent with grassroots that I can really think of. So trying to pretend like you had this grassroots credibility this entire time and always retained it, that's not going to work here.
Very well. She had
Trent,
computers back then.
Trent, hold on, Trent. We could take up the rest of the hour talking about it. If you can make it in
about to my point.
30 seconds.
About to my point. She taught me. Only years later did I find out she was a Rockefeller Republican, but she worked to get.
That's a bit of an old reference, actually. But those who do get it would tell you that, yes, that is a bit of a, what we would refer to now as a top-down or a good old boys club kind of thing. I mean, Rockefeller is still a name that's around that is synonymous with a lot of very tribal, a lot of very autocratic, and a lot of swampy kind of behavior.
Sims to beat Frank Church. Now, that is why it's important that you have good precinct committee people that know how to reflect their voters, and it's less important where they fall on the ideological line. Because
Trent Clark would later accuse me of lying about him when I said that he was relating a position that didn't lay importance upon the conservative principles of a candidate. Yeah, here we had him just saying that it actually wasn't important how conservative a person was. He literally just said this.
Their job is not to set policy. We elect policymakers to make policy. We elect precinct committee people to help get the voters' choice elected in the fall. That's what we have precinct committee people for. And so when you say, why are you supporting someone who doesn't meet a conservative litmus test? One, I don't know that for sure. And two, that's not the criteria for a precinct committee person.
Why isn't it, Trent? Why isn't that a requirement for being a PC in your eyes? Why? This party only works well when it actually stands up for something. You will not get a party that stands up for things when you have these wishy-washy people, when you have these people that don't believe in the platform, when you have people that will probably serve the purposes and ends of some other political party or faction.
The person who will bend over backwards
don't call
to
yourself
get the Republican elected.
Okay, I feel like you're just really actually telling us exactly what your agenda here is. You just said the job of a PCO is to get certain people elected. You don't like who's been elected, so you want to change the PCOs to get other people elected. Did I say it correctly?
No, not that last part. No, I like the people who the voters nominate.
Sure.
So one of the things I discovered
then you
is
shouldn't
so
have
many
to
of our
change out the
PCs
PCOs. If you like what our current legislators look like, why do you need to switch out PCO positions?
I've told you we're not. See, again, that's the false narrative. I am not switching out PCOs.
Then why are you spending $100,000
to elect PCOs who will work for their precinct?
That's just
voters?
hate right there.
Do you think the current ones are? Do you think the current ones are?
I know the current ones are not.
Then you're trying to split them out.
One of the candidates that I'm supporting is
Trent,
David
you're
Howe.
dodging here. Hold on a sec. Wait. Let's not go so fast here. All right, let's back up just a minute. You just said, I'm not trying to flip out the PCOs. I'm trying to put people in that are going to do, try to get good Republicans elected. But then I said, are the current ones doing that? You said, no, they're not. Which doesn't that imply you're trying to get the current ones out?
Well, yeah, it would imply that only if I've got someone who would do a better job, yes. But I'm not.
Clearly, you think you do.
Better job. He had to go there. Better job. Is a precinct committeeman doing a better job when all they're doing is just handing in their proxy every month while never showing up themselves? Is a precinct committeeman doing a better job when they deliberately forego showing up to any meeting between the reorg meetings? Is a PC doing a better job when literally all they are doing, and they know that they're doing this, when all that they're doing is just making sure that a person, some other person, does not fill the seat that they're in? Better job? Is that the word you wanted to use there, Trent?
Your group's given Michelle Zildingman to run. So clearly you do think you have those people.
And we have since learned in the commercial break that Sean Coletti, who is not a conservative, not even a Republican, he, at the last minute, affiliated with Republican, he's on your recommended list. So if you are trying to recommend different PCOs and these PCOs don't reflect Republican values, aren't you doing that to get non-Republicans elected?
Okay, so first of all, when you say my recommended list, I haven't issued any recommended lists.
Okay,
Now,
look,
now,
we,
Bonneville,
Really? You're going to play it like that when you're cornered? It's like, oh, it wasn't me that was putting out the recommended list. Really?
County,
Trent,
Bonneville County
we're
has,
talking about Gem State conservatives, and you're here representing them. Okay?
okay, but I've told you, Gem State Conservatives is not a top-down organization.
Yes, it very well is.
So no.
Wait,
don't
there's
impose,
Trent. I've
don't
seen the
im-
document. It's your name. It's Tom Luna's name. There are a couple of other people on it. Don't try and tell. We're not stupid, Trent.
Neil is making a little bit of a blunder here. See, Neil is assuming that this conversation is happening in good faith by all sides. It is absolutely not being done in good faith from Trent Clark's end. But in making this assumption, it's kind of taken for granted that that Trent is coming, from a consistent position here. He knowingly is just saying whatever is to make himself and others look good. In fact, what was the exact wording again? See if I go back a few seconds here. This does not rewind quickly when I actually want it to. Come on. Okay.
Trent, I've seen the document. It's your name. It's Tom Luna's name. There are a couple of other people on it. Don't try and tell. We're not stupid, Trent.
You're assuming that Trent is, that all he's doing is just trying to fake it out. Trent is coming from the position where you're just going to take my answer because that's the very top down way of it. Anyway, I'm spending too much time on this tiny pair.
Don't treat us like we're stupid. This is very much
treating people like they're stupid is part and parcel with top-down in top-down management. That's part of how it's supposed to function. You would have to, although it's said in a bit of a different way usually. However, treating people like they're stupid would definitely have to happen in any kind of autocratic sense, because the whole thing is really just sort of a constant appeal to power. Well, you can't have an appeal to power, a constant appeal to power, when somebody is knowledgeable and acts upon said knowledge instead of the orders from the top. Ergo, Gem State conservatives would naturally have to treat people like they're stupid.
headed by a few small groups raising fairly significant amounts of money. We're not dumb, Trent.
Okay, all of that is wrong, Neil. This is
Neil didn't say anything that was incorrect there.
not driven by Tom and I.
Yes, it was.
If you'd listen to how Gem State's Conservative formed, these county organizations were in almost every case already existing before Gem State Conservatives formed.
That's not the complete story, and plus what you're describing is a confederacy that sometimes acts in the constituent parts' interests. Plus, you're definitely not telling the whole story when you would absolutely get much more directly involved in a lot of the more local races, such as mine, or such as a lot of the ones that are out there in East Idaho. Or you were definitely involved and definitely interested in different results in northern Idaho, that's for sure. If it wasn't obvious from this from this interview, it was most certainly obvious in between the in between the end of this interview and the election results being published. Don't don't try to do that to us.
As what?
Yeah. How did they exist?
So for
And
instance,
if they
Canyon
did,
County,
hold on. Two questions and answer them very directly. If it already
sure.
did exist, in what form? And if it already did exist, why didn't the flip happen before now?
Well, they already existed in, for instance, in Oneida County, they had formed concerned Republicans of Oneida.
That's really not a good example that you want to be going with, Trent, because people in the smaller areas, the more rural areas, they talk, especially when you give them the means to talk. The Oneida true conservatives know exactly what I'm talking about, too.
County, Coker. And that organization existed a year before Gem State Conservatives formed.
Oh, sure.
Over
Yeah.
in the Magic Valley and in Canyon County, they had created a group called Truth in Politics.
Trust me, you do not want to be associated with those people or anything that was factionally close to the Wasdens. The entire landscape of Canyon County is littered with examples why you should never want to be associated with them, and you should never trust them.
And so Truth in Politics had already existed. I don't know what they called it in Bonneville County, but Stephanie Mickelson had been working already with a whole network of.
It's extremely interesting that the name Stephanie Mickelson comes up in this conversation, because just a handful of months later, and this is after Trump gets elected and after he's inaugurated, and ICE, Immigration and Customs Enforcement, they immediately start acting on the tips that people give them, especially about dairy farms in Idaho. Is Stephanie Mickelson the person that you want to be holding up here, Trent? Yeah, hindsight is 20/20. But I have a feeling you knew that dairy farms were absolutely hiring illegals, and that you knew what Stephanie Mickelson's normal everyday job is. You really want to be bringing that name up?
Folks, long before Gem State Conservatives was formed. So when you talk about
Trent, that tells us everything we need to know.
You're not doing yourself any favors.
That tells us everything we need to know on why they
Trent,
want to flip the PCOs.
Trent, she votes with Democrats more often than she votes with the Republican majority.
And there's that too.
Okay.
This is the problem we're talking about, Trent. You're not conservatives. You're not limited government conservatives, pro-life conservatives. You're not.
Oh, absolutely. And there's a really insidious thing that people in the former establishment love doing, is that some of them actually are at least passively pro-adoption. But one of the nastiest things you will ever learn working in the background politics, especially in Idaho, is that pro-adoption doesn't necessarily mean pro-life in a lot of circumstances. And it's horrifying when you run into that wall head first. It hits you like you just ran full highway speed into a solid brick wall when you learn that, yes, this person is very pro-adoption, a lot of these Southern Idaho, a lot of these East Idaho types, but they're okay with a baby being murdered in the womb. Anyway, I could get really angry about that and could rant for a while, but let's just keep going.
I feel like you're putting something forward, and furthermore, if all of these organizations were existing and active and functioning, why do they need gem state conservatives?
Okay, so
Good
you
question.
didn't listen to my Helen McKinney example.
Gaslighting. Oh, yeah. It's not like that's never been done before.
If you line up everybody who wants to get the United States out of the World Bank, which I'm one, I want to get the United States out of the
That's not exactly how you were putting it in certain resolution presentations in the past, Trent. You want to go down that road?
World Bank. We might have, according to the latest polling, 15% of the state that would rally around that one issue. For you to have a winning conservative team, you've got to reach out to people who don't necessarily believe identical to you.
That is the complete opposite from the truth. In order to have a winning conservative team, you need conservatives. We learned that lesson, actually kind of the hard way, in Ada County, both in 2020 and in 22, where we needed to lean more on the conservatism of our candidates and our voters, especially in the more western parts of Ada County, especially there. So just practical experience of anybody who was earnestly in politics for the right reasons. It immediately negates what Trent Clark just said there.
So the Helen McKinney, she was a Rockefeller Republican. She would not be what I would call conservative, but she lost. Ronald Reagan won, Rockefeller lost. She, being a Republican, said, fine, I lost. I didn't get my guy, so I'm now going to go to work to elect Ronald Reagan. And then she...
If only your faction had had that kind of attitude and that kind of record in elections past, we would be in an even better situation. It would be such a great thing if the factions of the Idaho Republican Party actually worked together. But that's most certainly not what happens most of the time.
Continued to work and elect Steve Sims.
So, Trent, why didn't you do that with Dorothy Moon? Why didn't you do that with Dorothy Moon?
Good freaking question.
Did you know if Dorothy Moon had been successful in her race for Secretary of State, I would be working hard for Dorothy Moon?
One, no, you wouldn't. And two, that's not what he was asking.
Okay, but why can't you apply the same principle to leading the Idaho Republican Party? Tom Luna lost.
I actually have. I have actually tried to make Dorothy be successful.
No, you haven't. You've been tearing at her every turn. You've been carping and sniping at her at every turn. Don't try to gaslight us.
And that's what no one sees is, except Brian Smith did see it. Brian Smith,
I think I know what he's about to reference, and it didn't go down like that.
Came down and visited me doing my job as a regional vice chair, and I was in Malad, and the question was, can we implement this caucus? And I said, you know what? It's what we've got. It's now how we need to make it work. And I supported Dorothy every step of the way, that we need to follow her rules. We need to do this caucus the way she said we need to do. I, by the way, think she did a fantastic job of, once we had a caucus, the way she rolled out a way to do a caucus.
That's not what you've been saying in private circles and in places where you thought only a few people were listening.
It was well done. I liked that, and I've complimented that.
But see, Trent, here's the thing, because as we were talking about the fiasco with the election date earlier, I remember interviewing you after last year's legislative session, and you were predicting all sorts of doom, that we wouldn't be able to afford it. Well, she figured out a way to afford it, that we weren't going to be able to pull it off in 1,000 precincts across the state. Well, they found a couple hundred locations. They made it happen. And so I feel like at every turn, you've been underestimating Dorothy and predicting her failure, and you've been wrong on some significant issues. And so I'm, in fact,
Okay,
Dorothy's. I'll be upfront with you,
so Neil, again, the narrative that somehow the 7% turnout was a success.
Oh, so now you're saying we didn't have a good caucus. So now you've flip flopped again. You're bearing a lot of resemblance to John Kerry here. I'll give you a little example from your time.
Predicted, in fact, that we would do more like we did in 2012, and we actually did worse.
It wasn't the same race in 2012.
And quite
Trent.
frankly, there was a massive winter storm that came through.
There was a storm. There was only one real legitimate candidate. Like, you can't compare the 2 years, Trent. That's apples and oranges.
Fine. No. But when I was talking to Neil, and I was predicting low turnout, I was quoting the numbers from the last time we did a caucus. We actually did worse. So when Neil says, "Oh, I predict these doom and gloom, and then I'm turned out to be wrong," no, I didn't turn out to be wrong. But you're right. A winter storm came in and made it even worse. And by the way, the winter storm, my kids, who both are at BYU Idaho, they were workers at our caucus in Soda Springs. And I had to go up in the winter storm, get them, bring them down on the Saturday so that they could do their job at the caucus and then haul them back up to college. Does that sound like a person who's trying to make Dorothy's caucus fail?
No, it sounds like a person who's trying to accumulate a bunch of reasons to complain later. And you know what? Good on your family for volunteering and doing it, putting in the work. But you have to realize that so did the rest of the state. The rest of the state also put their shoulder to the wheel, to use a Mormon expression. That doesn't negate all of the carping, all of the sniping, all of the, quite frankly, misogynist comments that were made in between, made in between. Trying to say that you've been, supporting, trying to support the current chair and at least try to work with him. No sane person who has been apprised of the facts of the matter would come to that conclusion. No sane person would do that. No sane person would say that you've been trying to make it work. Quite the opposite, in fact.
No, I don't.
I've been working hard to make Dorothy be a success, but every now and
No.
then she makes
Liar.
a decision that makes that impossible.
But
and I call it out.
Well, Dorothy has actually been listening to the show, and she texted me, and I had not seen this because I try not to get into the social media, kind of the muck and the back and forth. But have you called her Stalinist and compared her to Antifa?
I've called her authoritarian, and
Antifa
are.
You trying to get out of it? Oh.
Authoritarian, but I didn't call Dorothy Antifa or Stalinist. I said she's being authoritarian, and that's not conservative.
Okay. Well, Trent, here's the deal. One of our big issues with Stephanie Mickelson, who apparently Gem State Conservatives is closely aligned with, is that she testified on the House floor and likened anybody who would oppose porn in a library as Nazi-like. So likening someone to it is for me, just as a negative connotation as outright calling them that. So if you want to split hairs and say you didn't exactly use that word, I feel like this awesome relationship that you're saying you and Dorothy have is actually not accurate.
I feel like she's holding back, and she's being a lot more reserved than she really should be when calling this kind of thing out. But she's the one that knows how to work in radio. I'm not. So there's that.
Oh, I don't say that we have an awesome relationship, but what I am saying, Julie,
that's how you're going to put it.
Stop this litmus testing of here's a conservative issue. Are you on the right side of it? And if you're not one of us, because we're all different people. Neil and I can guarantee you probably agree on 80%, but we'll have 20% we.
Oh, yeah, the 80-20 lie. Why disagree with somebody? Why work against somebody who's you 80% agree with? That was the line going into a lot of this, and it was also a lie because you put in, you're trying to put in a lot of people who either don't have a political opinion at all, or worse, they have a fairly lefty, position. Then they're trying to bring in all this Reagan stuff about not speaking ill of a Republican, or Reagan's commandment, or why would I work against somebody who I 80% agree with, and yet here we had all of these quite frankly non-Republicans. Either they're some of the gem state conservatives were outright Democrat activists, by the way, and some of them were just psychopaths. Some of them they hadn't been politically involved since since people tried to put them into the bad delegate slates up at the Moscow convention. Yes, we remember that. And anyway, I keep getting distracted.
Agree on, but that Ronald Reagan was the one who articulated that. Doesn't mean Neil and I are on opposite sides.
Okay, but Neil is not affiliated. Hold on, Trent. Neil is not affiliated with a group that is spending thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars to use PCOs to get Democrats elected.
What organization is doing that?
Gem State Conservatives.
I believe that's what the purpose to remove the PCOs is to get more moderate candidates in place. You said it just 10 minutes ago.
I did not say that. I said that the purpose of getting PCOs who work for their voters is to get their voters' choices elected. If the voters are conservative, then that PCO who reflects their voters is going to be conservative. If the voters elect a Stephanie Mickelson, that was the voters' decision to elect Stephanie Mickelson. And the PCO, by the way, could be a hard rock, just the most solid conservative under the sun. But that PCO's job is to get Stephanie Mickelson elected as the state representative, because that's what their voters chose to do. That's what I'm saying, is that when you put a party position in and say, we're going to allow that party position to second guess the voters.
So, Trent,
you're putting power where our constitutional system doesn't put power.
Okay.
Our power lies with the voters.
I do want to say this, although I don't think I have as rigid interpretation of the platform as some do. But the platform matters. Being conservative matters. And I don't want...
Platform is a dirty word to most of the Gem State conservatives, they, them.
PCOs that are just like, oh, that's what the voters want, but they don't recognize that Stephanie votes with Democrats more often than she votes with the Republican majority. They're there as Republican PCOs. They're there to help the platform be honored. That there does need to be some level of integrity and affiliation. And yes, I'll use that term, though I think it's been maligned since then. It's probably not the most popular term. But I do think that if you're a PCO, are you just an empty vessel and you can't apply any Republican principle to the way you function? Is that what you're expecting of the Gem State conservative endorsed PCOs?
No, actually, what I'm saying is that the law, the Constitution, and the system of government that we've had given to us from our founders do not create the position of precinct committeeman. That is not a position that has power.
But it does inside the party. He's trying to skirt around that because he believes in top-down. He doesn't believe in grassroots up.
It's actually something that's come about because we need to rally around conservative candidates, or a liberal would tell you we need to rally around our liberal candidates in order to get them elected. And so therefore we have created this position of precinct committeeman so that we can rally around our conservative to overcome and defeat the fact that they're going to rally around them.
So now he's saying part of the stuff that he's kind of glossing past when he says, oh, these people, they should be blowing up the balloons, they should be licking the stamp, they should know what a good cookie tastes like. Having that position is a little bit in conflict with what Trent is saying now.
Liberal.
Yeah.
And that's the job of a precinct committee person, is to help us rally around the conservative.
Okay, hold on one second, Trent. We got to take our final break. We'll continue, by the way. We have to end the show on time. We'll have a very short segment when we come back. If Trent's willing, we'll continue the conversation on Facebook Live after this. And if you'd like to join us there, text the word live to 208-542-1079. Back after this.
Okay, I'm going to have to try to skip past all of this.
Asking as we face the brunt of rising costs. I'm working to make sure the
products. Are you tired of politicians who are okay with China buying Idaho land?
Nothing down. Choose the Forest River Wolf Den.
Falls on the Yellowstone Highway across from the Budweiser plant. That's going to do it for the show today. By the way, if you'd like to listen to our continuing conversation with Trent Clark, text live to 208-542-1079. See y'all tomorrow.
I'm Britt Raybold, and I'm running for the Idaho House.
Okay, Trent, we're now on Facebook Live. Where did we leave off? We were up against the clock and had to take a break.
I understand. I mean, the question was, is Gem State conservatives pushing moderates? We're pushing conservatives, but using my definition of conservative, we're pushing people.
They're using it in either ill-fitting or basically non-existent definition of conservative there.
Elect people who are to the right of center.
Okay, but Trent, the common definition of conservative today is that you're for limited government, you're pro-life, and so is it, I guess if you're going to use your singular and pretty limited definition of what conservative means, which is we're going to honor the last, revolutionary movement in government or something, shouldn't that be made clear?
Of government,
yeah. That it shouldn't be made clear. You don't mean limited government. You don't mean being pro-life. That's not the definition of conservative that you're using. It seems like maybe you're hijacking the commonly known definition of conservative and trying to use it for your own.
Hijacking definitions is also often what is being done on the left, specifically for the purpose of political gain and keeping people in line.
Purposes.
I'm glad you raised that example, because you used two really excellent positions for a smaller government and for pro-life. Okay. Now, you and I both believe that, and we call ourselves conservatives. But now think of this in terms of individuals. Okay, I've got the population who wants smaller government. Let's call them libertarian leaning. Okay.
That's maligning a lot of good conservatives, but okay.
And I have the population who wants pro-life policies. Would you agree with me that those two populations are not identical? Libertarian, people who are libertarian minded, many of them are pro-choice.
See the sleight of hand he just did there?
Okay. Many of them are pro-choice. So what functions in here, where we're having a huge debate, kind of mismatch, we're kind of talking past each other, is when you're talking sets of people, are you talking and, or you're talking or? What defines a conservative is that they're for limited government.
Trent, let me cut right. Let's cut right to the end here. Do people feel at home in the Republican Party with the entire platform? They don't have to agree with everything, but do they feel at home? And the analogy that I use is that if you want to be a Republican, then you either need to live in Conservativeville or in one of the suburbs of Conservativeville. And I think that we have people who are running for PCO positions, and I don't know that Gem State Conservatives is backing Sean Coletti or not. I'm not sure.
He is on their recommended list.
He is? Okay. So,
Yes.
so you have recommended Sean Coletti. I don't know if you've looked at his old Twitter feed, Trent. There is nothing conservative about Sean Coletti. He's got a couple of things he might say, like I believe in local control.
He has said that in the past, but only when it was suspiciously convenient for his particular point at the time.
He wants like a local option sales tax. That's kind of his version of local control.
Which is kind of backwards when you think about it, because wanting a local option tax is first asking the bigger government, in this case the state government, to give them authority instead of it kind of working the other way around. That whole premise there is backwards from what conservatism really should be operating as.
But if that's what Gem State Conservatives' definition is of conservative, then most conservatives don't want any part of it.
So, but see, that's what I'm saying, and that's what I was trying to explain.
Trent knows. He very well knows that he has royally effed up here, and he's about 5.5 feet in to the 6-foot grave that he's digging himself.
That checklisting is just not how it works in reality. It's those checklists are, to me, a perversion.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, it's not a checklist, but you should absolutely be honest with your voters on what your view is. The Gem State Conservatives paradigm is don't be honest with your voters. Just do what you can to get your candidate elected. If their paradigm wasn't that, then they wouldn't be trying to elect Sean Coletti to anything.
Of the way that politics actually works, because each individual has a position on the size of government, and they have a position on the value of life, and they'll form those and they'll hold those deeply to themselves. And for anyone outside to say, in order for you to be a conservative, you must have this position on the size of government, and you must agree on the quality of life, and you must agree on vouchers for schools, and you must agree on whether...
Well, I would rather have that kind of vetting than the kind of vetting that involves more access politics and more personal relationship kind of politics. Because that's what top-down inevitably involves, is who do you know, who are you closest to? That's effectively the Soviet system, by the way.
We shouldn't even have a party system.
Yeah, why have a party then,
We
Trent?
shouldn't even have a party system, because if everyone can have their own view and do whatever they want and put an R behind their name, it's meaningless.
The instant they want to run for office, it is everybody's business, Trent.
But that's not how it ever worked. The very first parties were formed all over the issue of national banks, and they found, by the way, that wasn't enough. Not enough people were even interested in a national bank. So Jefferson and Hamilton decided to talk about, well, who was their trading partner?
Trent, by the way, Trent, our session's going to expire in 9 minutes, and
we've got to quit doing.
But I don't mean this disrespectfully, but we can't have a history lesson with every point that we're trying to make, because we need to cut to the chase. We have a lot of people now listening on Facebook Live.
I understand, but my
and you can't be outright disrespecting both the listeners and the hosts when time is limited in that fashion, Trent.
The point is,
just can't do that.
So they added an additional part of their platform, not to narrow it. They added items to their platform to expand
Okay,
it.
so is it your belief that anybody who wants to put on the uniform and call themselves a Republican should be able to?
No, actually, my definition always has been you.
No, it hasn't always been. Whatever he's about to say, no, hasn't always been whatever.
Get involved with the party that appeals to your values.
That's a circular reference, by the way.
Okay. And so I know a hardworking teacher in St. Mary's.
Trent,
We want to
affiliated
talk East
themselves with the
Idaho.
Republican
Trent.
Party
Trent.
Yeah, Trent is so blatantly disrespecting the time of others here. And even though these two hosts have reacted quite forcefully, they're still holding back. You can tell they're still holding back because they kind of want to get this interview done, I would imagine.
We want to talk East Idaho. We want to talk East
fine,
Idaho.
Fine.
Have you looked at Sean Coletti's old Twitter account?
I know Sean Coletti. I thought he was an okay mayor. I am not supporting him for state legislature.
Oh, really?
Gem State Conservatives is recommending him, Trent.
If Gem State Conservatives is recommending him, it is because the organization in Bonneville County looked at who would best reflect the voters in that precinct.
Okay, who's the organization in Bonneville County? Who's the organization in Bonneville County?
Well, you've seen the slate. That's who Gem State Conservatives in Bonneville County is those precinct committee people.
That's not the whole story.
Well,
and they do not, by the way, they do not take orders from me.
Oh, but they kind of did, especially when they had to come up with a delegation slate. One of those, and by the way, one of those very delegates that you had a hand in organizing, they put their hands on me when I stood up at the convention in general session.
I do not run them. I did not tell them who to be on their slate. See, that's this false narrative that's been created. No, these truly are grassroots. See, I didn't even know if Sean Coletti is even opposed.
Okay, let's just get this out right now. Our definition of grassroots and your definition of grassroots are clearly different. We have a slate of PCOs, and I'm not here to stand in their corner or anything, but they're paying their own way. They take the money out of their own pocket to run as PCOs.
That's often how it goes across the state, yeah.
Giving money to people to advertise. That is not grassroots. When they get phone calls and you're recruited, that is not grassroots.
Okay, Julie, I have to say, you're tossing in there things that I'm not aware to be true. For instance, Gem State Conservatives, the organization I'm involved in, has cut a check to no one. We've given...
Really? You want to lie like that? Really? They cut a check to no one? Well, then what the heck are they even gathering money for?
Checks to no one.
Okay,
then why are they on the literature?
We're giving money to somebody?
Why are they on the literature?
You know what? I've got an example right here, Trent. Someone out of Oneida County said, why doesn't the organized group here, Oneida County Concerned Republicans, pay for their own campaign? They don't. It says right on their signs, paid for Gem State Conservatives.
We had a donor who actually lives in Oneida County who said, these people don't reflect us. And that donor said, if I give you some money, will you get good signs, good postcards? Would you get websites for our volunteers? That donor sent their money.
You can tell her face. She's going to be glad when this whole
Gem State Conservatives
mess is over.
You
can tell that in her face.
Before Gem State Conservatives even was formed, we're helping Coker make their case.
So one person who had money is now reflecting everyone in that area.
Got him.
One donor.
One donor is helping them get their message out. If they have a terrible message, if they have a non-conservative message, guess what? That message will not resonate and they won't be elected.
Is that what you're saying? Is that what you're going to say happened with Ada County, with Canyon, with Twin Falls, with Blaine, with Kootenai? Is that what you're going to say, Trent?
That's how it works, Julie.
Okay, so basically, Trent, again, I go back to this. Are you just letting anybody who wants to put on the Gem State conservative PCO candidate.
That's not quite how I know what he's saying here, and it's not quite how it happened here in Ada. At least a lot of the districts inside of Ada, because a lot of the candidates that they put forward were just lobbyists that where it was going to be strategically valuable for Gem State conservatives to have in power. So it's not like these are just randos. These were strategically important people. However, yes, it was very apparent, as I think they're about to get to here. It was very apparent in a lot of places across the state. Gem State conservatives was just basically putting anybody who could slap an R next to their name, or check that little box. It's like the only short. It's only the only short this channel has done too. Is the one about checking the Republican box.
Mantra or a mantle. Anybody who wants to can call themselves a Gem State conservative, a PCO candidate.
No, the criteria is that they have to be people who will listen to their Republican voters and work hard to elect the person their Republican voters want.
That's absolutely not what Gem State conservatives did in District 17, because they put in a bunch of lobbyists.
That's the criteria.
Okay,
even is the job of a precinct committeeman.
Even if those candidates are not adhering to the Republican platform.
Well,
it's basically
so talking, by the way,
it's platform agnostic.
The person who wrote the preamble.
Okay,
Trent,
platform. That's fine, but is Gem State conservative candidate?
You mean the preamble that is currently a mess in the platform? It's so far and is so far divorced from the actual purpose of a preamble in a large block of text. That one? Is that the thread you want to pull, Trent?
Are they expected to be platform agnostic then?
They are expected to work for the precinct voters who elected them.
Yeah, that's absolutely not what happened.
It's platform agnostic, right?
Well, no, this platform agnostic thing is so ridiculous. The platform is actually supposed to be the promise of the candidates. And one of the problems I have is, did you know that our last platform committee, we didn't invite any candidates into the room? Now that, by the way, that's a travesty. Because how can you commit somebody to something they didn't even have a hand in writing? So.
Oh, that's so backwards.
In my opinion, the way this should work is you bring the candidates in with the party, and the party says, "Hey, we want to hold you to a standard, and we're going to write this, and it's going to be what we run this general."
He's implying that the meaning of Republican shifts a lot, and it does shift, but not that much, and definitely not over a small bit of time either. It takes a while for it to move. And however, this should not be surprising from a man who presided over the era, over a very tribal era of the Republican Party. And just in case people didn't catch what I meant about that the last time I said it, tribal as in red versus blue, not tribal as in faction. See, the Republican Party was traditionally always about certain core concepts. In fact, the current Republican platform is very related to the first proto platform of the first pre-Civil War platform that the Republican Party ran on, but all the way back then. It's actually very similar. So this whole idea that the candidates drive it, especially when we have any random candidate that we don't know, that all we know is about them really most of the time is that they slapped an R next to their name. And this is just completely backwards. I need to get this done.
And you're going to walk out and we're going to say, you need to promise to uphold these principles. We're going to write this in our platform. Are you right now going to tell us you'll carry that? You'll go into the legislature and you'll pass these bills.
That's like half of the story there.
The candidates can say, no, I'm not willing to do that. And then you don't put that in your platform, because if you've got something in your platform that your candidate
if you disagree so much with the Republican platform, you shouldn't be running as a Republican.
Are not willing to carry, as a party, you're lying to people. See, you need to write your platform with your candidate.
But you're pretending here that the party is the only entity that can lie. You can have candidates that lie, and I like Dave Lent. Over his dead body, is there ever going to be a tax credit for education? He just won't let it happen. That's I haven't read the exact platform, but I know that Republicans stand up for parental choice. I think they're largely supportive of a tax credit, or the opponents would call it a voucher system. They want parents to have a wide latitude of choice here. So what you're saying is you want PCOs that will line up behind Dave Lent as a candidate, as opposed to looking at the platform that the party has put forward and honoring that. I don't think PCOs should be required to be platform agnostic and just follow along with whatever the elected candidates want to have.
See, this is the very rational way of thinking about it. This is the very rational paradigm that Neil right here is speaking. And that's very antithetical to what Gem State Conservatives was doing. It's very antithetical to what Trent Clark has been doing over the years. But I need to keep going.
It seems like a weird expectation to me. And it seems like the premise to actually flip leadership in the Republican Party. That's what this feels like, Trent.
So the phrase, "we support parental choice in education," is a phrase I strongly support. It wins every time. Almost all of our candidates say they would agree with that. I happen to know Dave Lent agrees with the phrase, "we support parent choice in education."
Oh, really?
Dave has a problem, though. He has a problem with using taxpayer money to a parental choice in education that has no accountability.
Trent, we're not.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a dishonest position, and he's slightly lying about what parental choice even is, but need to keep going.
About to cut you off. However, our Zoom session is about to end here in less than a minute. So we'll give you the last word, though. You've got about 30 seconds.
So that is one of the problems. We don't hold hearings on our platform, and I think we should. But the platform, at best,
that's a
is
lie.
A statement of general principles. We should turn back to our voters who have listened to the different candidates for the fine interpretation. Dave Lent has an interpretation of what parental choice means. His voters heard him, and they decided they agree with his interpretation. The precinct committee person should respect the decision of the voters. That's what Gem State Conservatives is about. Precinct committee people.
Okay, we're out of time. It just cut.
Okay, which is good. I've got to go too. So, I don't know. That's
it. This is so frustrating to me.
It's frustrating. You know what? My issue here is Trent can do whatever he wants to. He can build a PAC. He can put $100,000 of his own money in, but don't pretend. Don't talk out of both sides of your mouth about what you're doing. Just say what you're doing.
She said it a lot better than I could.
Just say it.
Yeah.
That's the frustrating part, to pretend like it's a grassroots effort when you sent out a mailer asking for money from big donors with your name signed to it, both Tom Luna's name signed to it and Trent Clark's name signed to it. That's not grassroots.
It's not even close to grassroots.
Yeah. So I just, the misrepresentation is the aggravating thing for me. I just... Be who you're
she and a lot of people.
And has that not been our problem this whole entire primary session? Our whole problem with Sean Coletti is he's faking it from the campaign trail.
Yeah.
That is disappointing. It's a lack of integrity to come on the radio show, Trent Clark. He's done great work, but just say who you are.
Yeah. He just texted me.
And said?
He said, thank you, Neil. You were fair. And I wasn't as articulate as I wish I were, but I'm glad we did this.
Good.
So
didn't this guy used to be a lobbyist? Yeah, he used to be a lobbyist. He said, I wasn't as articulate as I needed to be. Dude, you were literally you're literally the face of your, of your effort there, of that Gem State Conservatives, and you did that poorly. You should have taken the hint.
I think it's brave for him to come on. Those were incredibly tough questions. And my response to him would be just say who you are.
Yeah.
You've obviously got support behind you. Why do you have to hide it?
Yeah. Well,
you don't have to hide it. If he was more, in fact, if Trent Clark was more honest about what he was doing, he probably would have gotten far. He probably would have gone farther.
And honestly, I believe his definition of conservative is an outlier. Mm-hmm. And that to me, I mean, I'm glad he was honest about it. Yeah. But when they say they're Gem State conservatives, don't make the mistake of thinking that they're traditional Republican limited government, pro-life, pro-parental choice conservative. That's not what they are.
Right.
So,
I've got to go. You can stay on if you want.
No, we can end this. I'm spent.
Yeah, a programming note. Dorothy Moon will be on tomorrow to rebut some of this. So 9.
Oh, I should cover that.
Did she confirm then?
Oh, no. Okay. I thought you said that's what she wanted.
Oh, no. She just wanted time. I haven't confirmed a time with her yet.
So possibly 9 o'clock tomorrow.
You know what? I might cover that later.
Okay, you guys, have a great day. Thank you for being so active on Facebook. Truly appreciate it.
Yeah. Thank you, guys. And we'll see you tomorrow. I will try to do a Facebook Live tomorrow. So, yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
All right. See ya.
Oh.
Stepped into 1,000.
Well, let's see if I can just transition here real quick. So, that took a lot longer time than I was estimating. I don't know why I thought it would take less time than the total length of the video here, but it's really interesting to compare this video against what was being attempted to put forward at the time, and and compared to what actually happened at the convention and what's happened since the convention and whatnot. Very interesting to go past that, and just how much of a snake and a fish he is about all that. Well, anyway, I've done everything I wanted to do with this video. I just wanted to go over it again and put in some commentary of my own on top of this now that it's like a year out and whatnot. Interesting things I think will happen with a couple of the things that they grazed past here in the next, say, couple of months, especially with a lot of the areas that Gem State Conservatives definitely didn't do so well in. I am going to transition to the potato over here, and then I'm going to upload this. I also need to use the bathroom very heavily. So with all of that, y'all have a good y'all have a good one. Blessings.